Okay, so here's the Roomba disassembled. I should have started taking these videos at the beginning, but I guess I'm... So this will be more of a reassembly. Basically what I'm working on is these contacts down here are all worn out and it doesn't charge anymore. So we've got to replace them, and I've had to take this thing apart bit by bit. Here's the little replacement pieces. And so we'll see, documented putting it back together. So if you want to know how to take it apart, just watch this in reverse. Here are some of the parts of the Roomba as I've taken them apart. I kind of cleaned them up, you know, sprayed all the dust out, washed them down a little bit as I could, and laid them out here. Very careful with the screws. So this is like the beginning part of the adventure, was all of this. So it might be interesting to see some of these parts separated. Yeah, like I said, I should have done this more at the beginning, but there we go. So that's where these little roller thingies go in. There's the little wheel assemblies, a couple of screws for each of those. They just come right out. What's neat about a lot of these parts is actually a really good design. You notice right there is the connection, right there by my thumb. So that's where it plugs in. So you don't actually have to deal with wires. A lot of these things, they plug in. They have a little plug. And all right. Okay, so as I said, we're working on replacing the little charging, little port thingies, little charging points. And so you can see there's one of them right there. There's one more. I'm still gonna have to take something else off. This little piece here we'll have to get off to be able to get to them there on the underside. So just a little overview. I guess this is the last bit of the chassis. Here you've got the motherboard. And if you notice, it has these kind of connectors. If you've ever worked on a computer, it's very similar kind of connectors. And I had to very gently pry them off to be able to lift this off. So you can see there's where a connector on that side and over here. Had to get rid of them to be able to lift this up. And then this is part of that little front bumper assembly. And so here's the motherboard on top. There was also this little plastic cover thing. There we go. On there, you got some of this thing. Here's some other parts that came off, and I tried to keep all the little screws together. So this piece goes with these screws and so on. Here's another part on the top, part of the front bumper to get it apart, more of the chassis, very tip-top thing you may recognize, battery, fan, and so on, and then there was the other parts outside. Okay, so I said next on the agenda is we're going to take that apart so we can get to that other little charging piece, and then we will do our swapping out the bits. Okay, so those two screws removed, I was able to pull this thing out from here, and then that reveals the other little charging piece. So that piece and then that piece is what's going to be replaced with my spare parts over here. All right. All right, so I've got the little covers out there and there for those things. So I still need to get the little metal thing out. But I also have to undo this harness, so I just want to make a little note. So these two little wire harnesses together, to undo that tape to get it's the red and black one that is the one that's going to swap out with these others. So anyway, got to undo that and then figure out how to work those out and then pop the new ones in. Okay, I've separated out that harness and I've cleaned out the gunk from there a little bit. And so the things are loose now, but they still don't want to just pop out for me. I'm going to explore. I don't think these two things have anything to do with it, but I'm going to go ahead and pull those off, see if that gives me a little bit better angle. Okay. All right. So I took this piece off, and it does give me a little bit better access. It still looks like this is a solid one piece of resin. So, but you can see and hear that thing moving. Got a little bit more play on it. You know, there's the underside, and so there's this little gap, but it looks like you just feed it through, and then it had to have been bent after, you know, like to install it. So I can't tell Like, I don't know that these two pieces come apart, but I'm gonna explore one more, couple more screws here, see if that gives any more clues. So as I suspected, I disassembled these things, and that let me take this stuff off. You know, that's like with a little roller in the front and, you know, this little stuff off of the front, but that doesn't change anything there other than just give me a little bit more room to get into it. So it does look like it's just the one solid piece. So yeah, I don't see how it goes other than just by having to bend this slightly to get it in through there and then, you know, snap it into place. But all right, that's the next step. Okay, I was able to kind of pry it. I used this little screwdriver to sort of wedge in there and sort of pop it back. And so then that let it come free. All right, so we'll do the same thing on this other side. With this one, you know, I'll just work that little screwdriver in there. Use it as a little bit of leverage, just a little pry bar. Or if it doesn't fit, force it. If it breaks, it needed replacing anyway. All right, hopefully they go in, you know, easily as well. Okay, so I've got the little screwdriver wedged in there. I was going to try to see if I can get a picture showing, you know, kind of how I'm sort of prying it just a little bit to pop it off of that post. And then, yeah, once it does that, then it sort of becomes free. Whoops. And then, yeah, you can see it under there poking through. All right, so now I'm going to try to work it out. So it is finally free. So this is the original part. There's the little connector over to the motherboard wire. So just remember black. Well, I have it, you know, facing like this, right? So upside down. Here's the front. The black one was on this side. The red one's on that side. So I'm going to put it in the same way. Here's my new ones. Thankfully, it looks like they're bent the same way and set up the same way. So here's the new black one. And then there's the new red one, and then its harness. And where did it go? They're all connected. Here we go. And then its whole new harness and everything. So this will probably be a fairly challenging part, is getting that fed in there without bending it too much. It doesn't look, yeah. So now, here, let me put that over there with the new parts. It's the old one. So here you can see there's the little gap. It's got a, you got to get it fed through there. And then here's the one on that side. And then underneath, yeah, you just have to get it fed through there somehow. And that's all like a one-piece thing. There doesn't appear to be anything that you can take apart. And yeah, at this point, this is all looks like a single, you know, single piece. All right. Okay, so another little neat thing. So this little random piece fell out, and this is the front part of the tip of these little charging points. It's hard to tell unless you compare it to this new one, and you can see this front part of it, the way it looks. That's what this is. This is one of the old ones. So not only did it all wear out and broke into pieces, but kind of crazy. All right, so first step of the reassembly. Well, before we even do the assembly, got to be to put these new contacts in. And so the holes, I moved the harnesses forward to see it a little bit better. The holes, there's one right there, and then the other one is right there. So the trick is going to be, you know, fishing that in there, angling it around to try to get it in there without bending it too much. All right. All right, so I got it through, but as you can see, so then I got to like get it up back into this thing. So that is going to require just a little bit of finagling to get it to go around that little thing. The little edge has to go in there. All right, so not too bad. And then let's look back at the top. Move that out of the way. And then, yeah, there you can see it kind of popped into place. Okay, so the trick is to first go with this straight down, get it in there like you go down, hook it around, and then back up. All right, so this side is being a little more challenging. The left side went in super easy. This side, you can see that there has been a little bit of melting, I guess, from when the thing was shorting out or whatever. So I'm gonna have to get a little razor blade and trim just a hair, like a little millimeter on one side or the other, to kind of make that be able to slide in. If you can see, it's not completely like right angles anymore, so there's a little bit of warping to it. Whereas this one, it just popped right in without any effort at all. So something to consider. All right, so I popped one of them back out. So here's one you can see it's very clean looking, it looks original. And then this one you can see where there's a little bit of warping and melting. And I've done a little bit, very slight scraping with this. I got to do a little bit more. I ended up just taking the thing back out so that I can hold it up and then really see exactly what it is that I need to scrape on. So you may have to do that. All right, so it's able to pop through now. I did it a second ago. Yeah, there we go. So it went right in. And let me show you the way I was doing the scraping. Basically, I just kind of went in and very gently kind of scrape that side, and then scrape that side. And I just did it a few times, a little bit at a time, kept trying it. You don't want to cut too much. You can always cut more, but you can't cut less. The new points are in, right there and right there. And yeah, the little harness just fell right there. So now the most challenging part is going to be putting it all back together. Humpty Dumpty. There's the new charging point, left and right. And so now I got to figure out, remember, the order of everything I did. I don't think it has to be exact, but you know, some stuff has to be first. So gonna have to go back through all these things and get Humpty Dumpty back together again. All right, good times. All right, so the first thing, I'm going to put these two little doohickeys back in. So see, it fits right there on either side. The one on the other side. So if you remember, they kind of just went in right there. All right, so we get those. Okay, one tip is as you get the stuff in there, so you see I have the screws only halfway, because you got you got to make sure that the wires aren't getting pinched, that they're routing in a good way, that there's room for stuff to move around. And so you'll have to kind of just, you know, feel it out, make sure that there's not going to be any pinches. You don't want to have a wire get cut off, short circuit later on. So just kind of do that. So you notice I got a little bit of wiggle room, get everything just right before I tighten it down. All right, got the two little doohickeys. These part of the bumper sensors are hooked back in. So next up is some of the more of these front pieces. I got this thing, which the little swivel, you know, wheel will sit on eventually. So these two things go together. Also got this, whatever in the world that is, and these things, they were all in this front part of the assembly. And so then this wire, when this came back up, in the original, they were taped together. So I'm gonna get some new tape, like there's another little piece of some electrical tape down there. These were taped together in the harnesses, so I will do that. It's with the original tape. That'll be another thing I do. I want to put everything back the same way. All right, so working on these pieces next. All right, so feeding this in, and if you notice, there's a little groove here, so this only should fit in one way. It makes it nice and easy, so it'll line up. All right, so that piece is in there. So next is going to be these two little things. So this thing will fit up on here, and then this will fit right in there. So we'll get those screwed on and move on. Okay, so the next part is getting the motherboard back on there. So here's the motherboard kind of laying in place, and you get it lined up with these little holes here with that plastic cover. So there are, fold that back again, these little things all line up with the holes. The other piece is there's these three different harnesses. So here's the one for the charging port, this for the little wheel directional, and this is for probably the bumper controls. And so there they are there. So there's that bumper one, the wheel one is right there, and then the charging one is right there. And the nice thing, if you've ever done any computer work, is pretty much everything only fits in one place. So if you look very carefully, you'll see that this one has a little groove on one side, so that's the charger. This is, I would say, is the directional control. So that one's just more of a square. And then this oblong one just looks like it's connected with all these bumper controls. All right. Okay, so the wiring harnesses are back in place. There's that bumper control one. There's the one for the directional control, and there's the one for the charging. So they're in there. Not a whole lot of give. I'm not actually sure if I'm going to bother with the taping of the wires. I don't know if that matters. They seem to be laying pretty well. We'll see. And if you remember the original, they were, a couple of them were, these two were taped together like so right there, but I don't know if I see the point of it. All right, so we're going to get that seated in there and screwed in. All right, I've got the motherboard connected back up. One thing to be very careful is all the wiring. Make sure there's nothing pinching under there. You know, it took a couple of attempts and like reaching in there and kind of pushing stuff down. You know, get it lined up just right. And this little bumper thingy goes in there too. And then on to the next stages. And I guess there's this cover fits back on there too. But okay, onward and upward. All right, I did wrap a little bit of tape, electrical tape on this wire here. It was, the insulation was worn off and the wires were exposed. So I thought about trying to splice and, you know, cut it and re-splice it, but there's hardly enough to work with. So we're just going to try this. Hopefully that still works fine. And if not, we'll just have to come back and do something else. But anyway, the wire was still connected, so I just, you know, gave it basically new insulation. So this little sensor thing hooks up to this, whoops, front bumper, to this thing in the front bumper. All right. Okay, next part is getting some of these covers back on. So we've got these two things. So one thing to reflect on is the extra parts when you have leftover parts afterwards. I've already encountered some of that. And also screw management is a big deal too. So I've kind of like laid stuff out as I disassemble things. I group things like, oh, here's a group of 6 screws. Here's a group of 8 screws. And you're kind of like, well, what thing goes to what? And so here there are 6 screws. So I know that this thing here goes with that set of screws. And then this 8 screws, same thing here. This main case, there's 8 screws that will match up with that. And so one of the things that I had as an extra part, it wasn't this fits on right here, but there was another little piece of this plastic shielding that I was like, what? And then it goes underneath the motherboard. So I had to disassemble all this stuff again and get that other little plastic sheet underneath there, and then put everything back on again. So that's also because I didn't take pictures on the way down. So I was kind of like, well, and it was covered up by other things. I was like, what? Where did this thing come from? So that's always fun. It's a challenge of figuring out what do you have left. So anyway, so that'll be the next steps, is getting these 2 case part pieces put back on. Once they go on, then there's a couple more pieces of the case to fit back on, and then, you know, more of the bumper, the little wheel, and then the other components from the other side. All right. All right, so that main cover is on there, and I've got the 8 screws around, up there and there and there and there, all around. So next up is this white cover, which will fit in there, and that has the 6 screws. So that'll be the next step. Okay, so I've got the white cover on there as well. So I think the next thing I'm going to work on is getting this little bumper hooked back up. And there's this little sensor thing that connects up to it as well. So you've got the top part of the bumper and then this bottom part of the bumper which holds it on. So there's that, and then I'll move on to the rest of the cover pieces. There are some additional screws and such to go on to hold on underneath the handle and so on, but I want to make sure I got this all set because it's a little bit awkward before I tighten on those final screws and clamp those things on. Then it'll be time to work on the underside and get all of that stuff added back into it that I have peeled off. Alrighty then, so there's this thing, and if we look under here, you can see where that little sensor is going to connect. Up to there, and then, you know, of course, getting that onto it as well. All right, you can see there, I got the little sensor hooked back up to this bumper. I had to flip the thing over to get it lined up right. It's a little bit to get the wire in there just right. All right, so I've got the main part of the bumper all lined on there, hopefully correctly. There's that spring is also, you got to make sure it's just right. And then to put the little cover of the bumper to hold it on, and then I can move back to the rest of the top plates there. All right. All right, the bumper is now screwed on, and this was easily the most difficult part because those screws were really hard to get a good grip on, and trying to just keep this thing on that spring while it's not screwed on, you know, but you got to screw it on to keep it on, and it's sort of a, you know, you got to balance all of it. So yeah, that part was a challenge, but it seems to be on there good now. And there's my beautiful new charging points. The bumper is on. I'm going to do a few more screws. There's underneath the handle, there's a little screw there and a screw there. They're somewhat hard to get to. And then there's a couple more screws like there and there and there and there. So we got 6 more screws. So there's some screws, and we're going to screw them. All right, those 6 additional screws are in there. The ones say under the handle, and just to the side, under the handle right there and there, and there and there. And then next, it's time for these things all just pop in. They have these little pop thingies, little tabs. And so for these things, how I got them off, you have to pry them off very gently with a screwdriver. Which one did I use? I used a little flathead screwdriver to ever so gently kind of pop those things off. So these are some of the first things that you have to take off to get to it all. And so there's sort of a leap of faith with some of that. And I did discover there was a little damage. One of these little tabs popped off, broke off of one of these things. Not that one. Or that one. It doesn't look like. Probably this big one then. Oh yeah, right here. You can see right there where it broke off. So it was the one that's intact, and this one's a little bit busted. So you can see. So yeah, so do be gentle and careful. Okay, so I was kind of fooling around with these a little bit, so I have them laid in places where they would be. I haven't popped them on yet, but the way that I took them off, if I remember correctly, this outer one, this is the way it seems to go. The outer one, then this little half dealie, and then this centerpiece. And that seems to be the best way to put them back on. Like if I put this one on first, then, you know, is there some, well, there's not really any blocking. So maybe it doesn't really matter, see, because that has full clearance. I can get that one on, or even that one, but I think I'm going to go from the inside out, because it doesn't seem to be, there would be any hindrance. See if I have that one in first, easy to work with, and I can get this one. Yeah, get that one on next, and then that one last. Okay, let's give it a shot. All right, so that center little cover is in there and it's nice and fully seated. Went in pretty easily. So then next I'm going to get the little semicircle and then the outer ring. Okay, the semicircle's in there, so that completes the aesthetic there of the handle. So time for the big O ring. All right, so now got the top side is all completed. So next up will be the underside. And so with that, so here we can look at it in all its awesome glory. Here's our bumper. So it's going to be this little wheel piece here at the front. And so what we will have, so the wheel is going to go in here. The little gray doohickey goes in first, and then the little caster. And then start assembling these other pieces in, the other wheels, the battery compartment, the little scrub brush things, and the dustbin, all that kind of stuff then fills in the rest of the undercarriage. All right. All right, the wheel is back in there, a little caster wheel, so now it's time to move on to the rest of the underside parts. There's the battery. I'll do that at the end. The rest of the parts are outside. Oh yeah, and then also the little brush thingy. Okay, so these are the other parts that I have outside. There's the dustbin, you know, where all the trash goes. Another cover. Here's the brushes. There's the brush assembly. And then the motorized wheel. So I have to start putting those parts all in. All right, so let's take a look at the remaining parts. Here, there's the dustbin, and there's the motor wheels, there's the brush assembly, and the brushes. Got the battery case, the little rotating brush, and little screws for it. And then there's the final cover thing of the underside. That should be last. And of course, it would not be a project without some leftover parts. These are some mystery screws right there that I don't recall missing anything, but apparently there must have been something that had some extra screws. So we'll see. And not everything here seems to have its own screws. So who knows? It's always good to have spare parts. Oh, something else I wanted to highlight. I really am impressed with the design of this thing. So here's the section for one of the motor wheels, and right there is what connects it. So you don't have a traditional harness. There's a little slot, kind of like a PCI slot maybe on a computer, but smaller. And then here's the receiving end, or the plug-in end. See, there's the little connector. So very ingenious, makes it very simple and easy to do, and a lot of the parts work that way. Let's see, nothing. Oh yeah, so same thing here on the brush assembly. See, there's the little connector there that slides into that thing. So the one there and there. Here's the thing for the circular brush, so it connects to. So it's very slick as far as not having loose wires on this part. The wires on the inside, obviously you saw they were disassembled, and then there's the battery component there. So pretty slick. Okay, so here's a rough arrangement of all the pieces. I have them laying loosely in there. And the other nice thing is that I do believe, you know, I think I undid it before, that all of these are independent of each other. It doesn't matter. You can do them in any order. This one, I mean, it doesn't matter, but I think it would be easier to put this in first, just because of the ability to work at the screws or whatever. But you can do these in either order. This is the rotating brush thing there, and the wheel. But so I'm going to do that one before I do the wheel, although it doesn't really matter. Just to give me easier access to the screw is all. But there's nothing that actually blocks anything. So just kind of a loose fit of everything to kind of see how things look. There's that. Pull those out. Battery. And then the Rotatotron. And of course, it's stuck now. All right, so there I have the first wheel in there. I've got the screws about halfway tightened. Same thing with the circular motor. Got that in there. And then I'll get the other one in there. So there we go. All right, so I got the wheels and the central motor. Next up will be the brush assembly. Get that in there. I guess also the little rotating brush. And then last will be the battery and dustbin. Okay, so there's our brush assembly ready to get our brushes. It's been screwed in there. And it's pretty straightforward. You just plop these get in there the right way. There we go. Come on, there it is. Yeah, see now it's going, and then there. Cool. So you can see they each have the rotating ways about them. All right, one step closer. Okay, getting closer. So the next step actually is going to be this cover piece. And the bin you're meant to be able to take out all the time, and then to change the battery you can do it without having to remove that. So that will go in afterwards as well. So yeah, so I'm going to get that on there, and then once I have that on there, then I can also add the rotating brush. So I'm going to do those next two things there. All right, final bottom cover is on there. Next up, the brush. All right, the brush is in place. Time for the battery. Then we'll get the dustbin and take it for a test bin. All right, well, as soon as I started screwing the battery in, the thing powered on and made a bunch of beeps, so that's always a promising sign. There's the dustbin in place. And then, let's see. There we go. Ooh, we've got some things. It says set day and so on. So, at the very least, that part works. Next will be to see if it does anything. All right, let's see if I can just, or do I have to? Huh? Hey, look at that. So it's moving around. Let's check a bumper. Oh yeah, it's doing its thing, getting around me. Oh, turn, whoop, yep. All right, so the bumper works. Excellent. Next, we will put it on the charger and make sure that the charger works. All right, so here we are next to the charger. And let's see, can I get it to pick up? Hey, it did its little thing, and then I guess that means that it's charging. It made the noise. Yay! All right, we'll stop it again, and then I'm going to place it back here on the charger. So that's the green. Let's get it on there, and there it is. It's got the little indicator showing that it's charging. So the operation has been a success. Okay, last little bit on the tools that I used. Obviously a bunch of screwdrivers of various sorts. I did occasionally use these little micro screwdrivers, not very much. I also got these little things. These helped me to grab stuff when I was trying to manipulate the wires inside and moving stuff around. Air can, dust can, there's the old parts. Lots of cotton swabs and paper towels to clean out the dust. Did a lot of cleaning of that thing. Also wore my coronavirus mask. And then, of course, some flashlights. Tape. You know, there's electrical tape I use, scissors, more lights. Oh yeah, this is a great little thing. Got a little magnet on the end, so when you drop screws, you can pick them up easy. And then, that was the razor blade I used for the part I showed where I had to, you know, fix that little plastic piece. Alrighty, and then, there we are. Oh, and a happy ending of the Safe for Work variety. These two leftover screws, I finally realized they're not leftovers. They were just from like the original screws, and these little parts that came with screws, I just used the new screws because they had the new things, the new little plastic clips, everything, and so that's what those are. These belong in there. So no leftover parts. Success!